What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Thought Leader Podcast. My name is Dylan Barr, and I'm your host. Today is episode 5 of the Thought Leader Podcast, where we interview past and current thought leaders in the space of health, wealth, and relationships in hopes of reaching past, current, and most importantly, aspiring future thought leaders, people that have a message in their heart or a mastery in their mind and are getting ready to get it out there, getting ready to get outside their comfort zone. So we interview people from around the world to understand their story and their uncomfort zone trekkings. And today we're going to be speaking in the realm of wealth with John Mylant. John Mylant is the founder and CEO of JMylant Associates. He embodies the essence of an entrepreneur driven by passion for creating successful enterprises. He pioneered a myriad of ventures, from the inception of the residential service company managing an employment agency and the strategic oversight of the health insurance agency. He has left an indelible, took me a while to get that, indelible disruptive mark on the business landscape. And most recently, John joined Thought Leader's Business Accelerator program. He was a real estate coach, helping real estate agents increase their business, shift their mindset so they're ready for the industry. John Mylant came into our program, really taking a risk and a gamble on yourself, and then turned it around to make $60,000. And I believe it was less than 2 months. Unreal. And he has since shifted his offer to working with men who have been successful in their industry, but really establish the confidence and the passion needed to build a side passion project. He just kicked off that business early this year. Super excited to have him. John, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you, Dylan.
Awesome, man. This is going to be fun. We're going to talk today about, like I said, the realm of wealth. We're going to talk about fear. We're going to talk about self-doubt. We're going to shift things up. We're both odd ducks. You're an odd duck. I'm an odd duck. So we're going to change up the typical structure we take on this podcast. But I do want to start where I typically start. This is the Thought Leader Podcast, and I think the word thought leader is very subjective. Everybody has their own view on it. So you putting yourself out there in the industry, what does being a thought leader mean to you?
Being a thought leader means being able to come up with solutions to problems for a particular industry, where I'm going to stand out. I'm not going to be part of the crowd. Like a coach, I'm not going to be just a coach. Wherever I'm coaching, I'm going to be one of the best, and I'm going to be one of the leaders.
I love that, man. Taylor Conroy would really respect that, right? He says the market is out there for people to solve a common challenge, right? So being a thought leader, helping people solve challenges, and like you said, also standing out. You do a lot of things to like that put yourself outside and say, hey, look what I've done. And you have an array of backgrounds. I mean, you have real estate, you have the health industry, you're helping men with mindset and confidence, but it all forms around wealth. So I believe in the power of storytelling. Take us back to the beginning of this story. Like, what made John Mylant want to go into business in general? It was like 4 years ago, right?
Well, yeah, by the time I was 22, I was fired about 8 times. And until I discovered one day that I like working for myself. I could never work for people because I always tried to make something better. I could never follow directions. So I finally figured out that, man, I got to work for myself. So that's when I started tinkering around, learning, doing different things. And year by year, I kind of grew in experience and started to do different things.
And how long were you with all this, that the stubborn nature of like, no, I'm going to work for myself. And you see a lot of people that'll go into real estate that kind of like that 1099 mindset. They're like, I work for myself. How long were you in real estate for?
I was a real estate coach for 15 years.
Damn.
Prior to that is when I ran a health insurance agency.
Got it. So real estate coach for 15 years. And recently, like getting started in Thought Leader's Business Accelerator program, you shifted for a new offer of real estate coaching. What encouraged that shift for you?
to move from real estate to men.
Yeah.
You know what? I have a message I discovered in my own and I want to tell the world, and real estate isn't big enough.
Mm.
So I decided I'm going to men in general with the message that I have, well beyond real estate.
What made you with it? Yeah, because like you said, you can only do so much in the scope of real estate. You had success with it. What made you say, you know what, I want to work specifically with men. I want to work specifically in the realm of confidence. I want to work specifically in helping them start their passion, especially if we take your mindset on this, which is there's a challenge out there that I want to solve. What did you see that made this seem like the next lock and key decision for you?
Dylan, it was my own experience. A lot of people don't know this, but I've been successful in life. None of my kids are serial killers. I've got grandkids. I own numerous properties. But on the inside, I always felt like a failure, and I carried that for years. And it doesn't matter how many times I made six figures, I was always a failure on the inside.
Mm.
And this is what I wrestled with until I discovered one day, without getting into, I could sit here for 20 minutes and give you this incredible story about the walk. But, one day I was sitting in an orphanage in Jamaica holding a AIDS baby. I went there to be like Mother Teresa. I thought maybe if I'm like her, I could find peace or purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
And a little voice inside my head said, no, this isn't it. And so I came back home again, distraught, was listening to a Tony Robbins video. And at the end of the video, and this is what started to change my life, he said, anything we want in life is just a decision. And I was looking for this destination. I was looking for the destination of peace, the destination of happiness, the destination of purpose. And suddenly it just dawned on me. It's like a nuclear bomb went off in my head. It's like everything I want, I have already. And it's just like, okay, I think I'm going to be happy. And I was. And from there, I went on, I started, and I understood that the cause of everything in my life is fear.
Mm.
So I taught myself how to get rid of fear. And that's where the confidence came in.
Yeah, I really like what you said of it's not the destination, but a decision. Working overseas, you can see sometimes people like really wanting to start certain businesses, and you'll start, and you'll start having one-on-ones with the CEO, and you'll be like, man, you're still not happy. You had this. It's like you go down to a place like Jamaica saying, hey, this is what the world will say makes me happy because I can say I did this. But if you were honest with yourself, there still wasn't something fulfilled. So you decided to come back, make a decision. And now begins the chapter of dealing with fear, right? We actually just spoke with Shanita Sol-Ray last week on our episode, who talks about it. All it is love and fear. You choose which way. And you're going to be, even the comfort zone, you have to deal with your own shit. You deal with shit outside the comfort zone and also inside of it. But specifically on the realm of fear, you decided to say, hey, I want to understand it and I want to tackle it. What did you discover in the journey of like, hey, how to overcome fear in your life and how do others do it?
One word, kudzu.
Oh, perfect. Easy word. Let me write that down.
You know what kudzu is?
I do not.
Kudzu is an invasive weed in Southeast United States. It grows up to 1 foot a day. This stuff could cover the entire planet in 50 years if it had its way. People mow it down, but they can't kill it. And here's what I learned in my life. So I became happy. I decided to change everything in my life. So I started to write down all my problems. One of the things I had a big problem with was it was hard for me to make a decision. So I wrote this stuff down on a sheet of paper. I said, okay, I'm indecisive. So I said, why am I indecisive? All right, I don't trust my decisions. Why don't I trust my decisions sometimes? I don't trust myself. Well, how come I don't have enough self-confidence? That stupid little voice in my head, that little inner critic. I said, where does that come from? That comes from fear. I drew this map. Mm-hmm. And suddenly I saw fear is a root. And then out of fear came two things, the inner critic and making excuses. And from these two things came everything else. And I said, Kudzu. You see, Kudzu can't be killed unless you dig up the root. And the root has something called a crown root. From that crown root grow two shoots. And from those shoots grow all the leaves and vine and everything. The only way to kill Kudzu is to cut off the crown root at the main root. And then everything will dry up because there's no nourishment. And it suddenly dawned on me, oh my gosh, I could eliminate fear in my life if I focused on two things: silencing my inner critic and stop making excuses. So that's what I did.
Like you said, the two shoots that coming off of this Kudzu, which I'm now writing down probably inaccurately, inner critic and making excuses. So the whole concept is, let's dig up to the root, that crown root, and cut it off at the source. Cut off inner critic at the source, cut off making excuses at the source. So let's, for those listening, say, hey, that sounds logical. I'd love to do it. But it's also it's a big task. So for you, what would you say are those initial steps to silencing an inner critic? We'll go inner critic first. Is that all right?
Okay. Yep. Easy. First of all, the inner critic is not real. Have you ever said something to somebody and they misunderstood it? Or been on the other end where somebody said something to you and they misunderstood it? That's all we're doing. We're misunderstanding ourselves. When we hear that inner critic, instead of having balance between your thoughts and your feelings, we're too much into our feelings. And our inner selves may say, hey, John, maybe we should try a different route here. That's not working. And I'll be in my feelings. I'm going, you said I'm a failure. We're just misunderstanding ourselves. And if we stop and we bring some logic into it and go, wait a minute, am I really a failure? We go, that's stupid. Yeah. So we call it inner critic, but there's no criticism there. We're just misunderstanding ourselves because we're too much into our feelings.
It's almost taking as if this inner critic, we'll call it the word, coming in to say a statement, and our emotional side ties itself to be like, oh, you're being a critic, oh, you're being this, when really it's a thought that's coming through that we need to probably just get out. For me, writing it down, like, yeah, it's not fucking true. And then you can just say, okay, all this is a thought. So what would what would you be encouraging someone to do in order to slow down that thought coming in to say, this isn't a critic, this is a thought?
Number one, humor is the medicine. You got to learn to laugh at yourself because we're just human. Okay. We're always going to get into our feelings a little bit too much. And it's okay, because that's just being human. When you hear the inner critic, you realize it's not real. You just laugh and go, that's dumb, I said that. And then you just deny it because it's not real.
Power of laughter. Today's episode of the Thought Leader Podcast brought to you by Patch Adams. Make sure you just go watch that movie. It's a really good movie. I'm gonna go the other side though. First, it's silencing the inner critic. It almost sounds like slowing down or writing out what you're hearing, right? So you can see it logically and not emotionally. And then the other part that I'm hearing from you is being able to put humor on it, being able to laugh and say, okay, is this really true? And 9 times out of 10, I'd imagine it's not, right? Maybe there is going to be that one time that's valid and say, maybe I should try this instead of, doing this one thing. The other thing that you said is making excuses, right? So if we're taking the root of this kudzu plant, kudzu weed plant.
It's a weed.
Kudzu weed. What the other part of the crown root is the making excuses. So what would be the first steps to eliminate or draw back on the excuses that we make in our life?
Okay, the excuses is the opposite. We're too much into our logic. And we're trying to justify why we're not going to do something so we can live with ourselves. We make an excuse as to, why we can't do something, and we deflect our responsibility and place the blame on somebody or something else so that we can live with ourselves. And we recognize that, you know what, I'm too much into my head. I'm going to bring some feelings back into this. Then you stop, and what you're going to do is you're going to own it. That's all. Own your action or own your decision instead of deflecting responsibility and placing it on somebody else or something.
So really, when you look at this root and two causes being an inner critic and us making excuses, and then we see ourselves as both emotional and logical beings, you're saying the inner critic part of our being is the part that leans too emotional. We tie emotions to it. And the making excuses part of our being is too logical. It's like, well, it's because of this, this, and this. So boom, there, logic. I don't have to do it, or that's why I don't. And it's slowing down to understand, am I making an excuse? And if I am, how logical am I looking at it? Could I put some emotion into it? Slowing down and saying, am I being having an inner critic right now? And what is the analytical side or the logical side of this, rather than just getting too emotional?
Exactly.
That's a really cool concept, man. So go ahead.
Once you starve fear, the root of what? Love comes in, right? And by nature, since self-doubt has nothing feeding it, it dries up and withers. What goes in its place? Confidence.
What would then be, it's like, I guess here's the shit, because you said you started doing this. So one, I'd be curious of how did this start to play out in your life, right? So let's start there before I ask my follow-up. I don't want to add on 8 questions with this. So you start starving the root. What does your life start to look like? What shifts start to happen in your life? I know you were telling me before we started of your morning routine changed, just waking up earlier. Like, walk us through that.
Well, since I had no fear anymore, again, it takes time. It's not something that just happens overnight, obviously. It takes following a routine. And since fear started to go away in my life, I realized I could do anything. And it doesn't, I was free to do everything and anything I wanted. And I never questioned if I could do it or not, because I don't care if I can do it or not. If I choose to do something, I'll figure it out. I'm not worried anymore about this or that. I don't care about what people say about me. I don't care what they think about me. And at the same time, I grew some very, very strong values that I live by. And like I think I've shared this before. My greatest strengths now I have 3. I call them authenticity, humility, and honesty. Since fear is not a influence in my life like it is in other people's lives, I have nothing to hide. So these are my greatest strengths now. Now, understand, Dylan, when we talk about fear not being an influence, that doesn't mean I won't get scared. Part of being human is recognizing that everything can happen at any time. I can get scared or intimidated, but it's like a wisp in the air. It's not something that influences my day.
Well, it's not as rooted, is really what it sounds like, is you took some time to really unearth this, right? So then when it starts to seed, it starts to germinate. If we keep using that analogy here, it's harder for it to take root. It hasn't been sitting there for a long time. So with it, in your, you've worked with men now, you're helping men in your program. How long does it take, or how easy maybe is it to just eliminate that fear?
It takes 5 minutes a day of practice, is what it does.
Okay, explain further. Explain that further.
Well, you live mindfully. Okay, what we're doing, the difference of what we're doing here now is, instead of being reactive at a subconscious level, we are now making a choice to live the day like we want to. I am now active. So I get up in the morning and I'll take 3 to 5 minutes, and I'll like today's the 26th of January, right? I'll say, you know what? My name is JMylant. Today is Friday, the 26th of January, and I am living mindfully today. I'm aware of my thoughts, my attitudes, my feelings, my decisions, and my actions. If I have a negative thought today, it's okay. I'm just human. I'm just going to laugh it off, but it's a wisp. It's not going to dictate my day. I'm going to be aware of my feelings. And if I hear that inner critic, I'll just laugh it off because it's not real. And I'll bring some balance into that. If I start catching myself making an excuse, I'm going to stop. I'm going to own whatever that is. and I'm gonna listen to my inner self. I call it my world-class self. I'm gonna listen to world-class John today when I make my decisions and the actions that I take today. I say that to myself every morning, but slower.
Even you and I have both read What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, which I love. Do you feel that monologue, which can be extremely powerful for you, is that change from person to person that you help? Like, do they kind of have their own morning monologue, or do you try to keep the same framework
I try to keep the same framework
for
because
anyone you work with?
yes, because what we're trying to do is make sure the rat race doesn't have influence over us so that we forget everything.
Hmm.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be aware of our thoughts and feelings and then make the choices that we want for the day. So it's living differently. It's getting out of that rat race and living the way I want to just for the day.
Hmm. And it's almost like you're taking time to be aware of our logical and emotional selves every morning and saying which part of the day do we not want the emotion to tie itself to, and what part of the inner critic, and what part of the day do we want emotion to step forward in the battlefield, when we start making
Mm-hmm.
excuses. And the same thing goes with the logical part of our brain. So you're kind of saying that to the world. I get it. I love it. But I want to get to the part of the interview now, if it's okay, a couple of minutes left, where we talk about getting uncomfortable.
Okay.
Because talking about this stuff for some people is uncomfortable, especially when we're talking to people that are rooted in comfort zones. You decided to get outside your comfort zone to,
Mm-hmm.
to spread this message. And I know you got uncomfortable because you're in the Business Accelerator program, which I have a hand in. And your outreaches initially to start this business was using your network and leads that you had in the real estate agency, reaching out to
Mm-hmm.
some of these people that are go, go, go. I always sometimes say that type of business is like the way of the wolf, dog eat dog. I am the lone wolf. I am going to make a name for myself. And you're the guy jumping on a cold outreach with some of these people just to ask them questions, or going in Facebook groups just to ask questions, to talk about where fear is rooted, to talk about like vulnerable posts, what it's been for you and what you've taken from it. That's uncomfortable, right? Why for
For
you?
some, yeah.
Why for you was it so important to venture out into the uncomfort zone to spread this?
But I'm not as young as you.
What?
I know I'm 2 years older than you. That's all right. And you know, a long time ago, I was at a conference in Phoenix, and during lunch from the conference, I climbed one of the mountains in downtown Phoenix, and I just sat up there, and I thought, you know what? The only thing I really want to do is bring out the best in people in life.
Mhm,
And I took a rock off the top of that mountain. See this right here?
mhm.
Long, long time ago, I shellacked it. I brought this back as a promise that I made to myself. It sits on my desk today,
Hmm.
and until the day I die, I want to bring out the best in people. And the way that I learned for me to bring out the best in people is to teach them that they can have a life without limits if they learn how to first stop the influence that's limiting them, which is fear. Once you stop that, then you allow the leaves of love to grow, which are what? Instead of timidity, you got boldness. Instead of indecisiveness, you're decisive. Instead of inconsistent, you're consistent. Instead of doubtful, you're confident. These are the leaves that grow from the root of love instead of the root of fear.
Hmm.
They grow naturally. You don't have to, you don't think about, I wonder if I can do this or not. That's gone. So you don't think that way anymore.
What do you think? I mean, shout out to Shanita Sol Ray. Again, coming back to this concept of love and fear, we've now talked about it in the realm of health, and now today in the realm of wealth. Coming back to, this concept of the uncomfort zone, why do you feel most people don't get outside their comfort zone when it comes to their passions, right? Like some people will go get outside their comfort zone momentarily, but why do you feel people choose not to get outside their comfort zone for their true passion, their true mastery?
Uncertainty. Inside they know there's something they want, but the fear of going into uncertainty, or the fear of the feeling of failure or the feeling of rejection or something like that is stronger at the present, because fear is what's influencing them. There's that light inside them that wants to come out, and they know it. But in the present, you can't bring that light out, because it's like cutting the leaf off one of these, cutting the leaf off self-doubt. It's just going to grow back, because the nourishment is in their life is coming from fear. It's not coming from love. Until they cut that off, that light cannot come out.
So then with it too, it's like uncertainty is only part of, we're going to keep with the garden and plant analogies, right? Uncertainty only being like a leaf of the deep-seated root of fear, so that we can replace it with love. What would you say, anyone listening to this, that's like, you know what? These guys are kind of kooky. These guys are odd ducks. These guys are very similar in age. But I kind of dig it. They're thinking of getting outside that comfort zone. They're getting close to like that jump off point. What would be your words of encouragement for them, or what would you tell them to focus on in order to get uncomfortable consistently?
Focus on two things: silencing your inner critic and stop playing the blame game. That's all you have to do. Everything else will die on the vine.
Okay. I dig this. And anybody that's watching this, I'd be curious, like for you, it sounds like the people that you help now are more like who, instead of me making the assumption, who is it that you help? Who is it that you work with now with your business?
I work with mostly with men.
Okay.
Usually these guys are fairly successful in business, but unfulfilled, because they either want to go out on their own or they want to start another business. Mm-hmm. But they don't have the confidence to do it.
Yeah. Success in one business, like you've had success in real estate, right? You've worked with some men in real estate. They've had success in one. It's not what they want to be doing long term. It's not their passion project. They're looking to build that, but it's that fear. It's they're going into a garden that's rooted in fear again. Yeah. What's the best way for them to reach out to you, man? You seem pretty approachable as a human being. How do you chat with people?
The best way I have a text number that I usually leave with people.
You're very approachable.
Just have them text me when they're ready to talk.
Can we take that number and put it in the description here?
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
Okay. We will put your text number in the description for today. And if anyone sees it, they're like, you know what? I like this guy. I'm going to reach out to him. They can text you. And you can't yell at Thought Leader for doing that, because you just gave me, this is a virtual handshake. Awesome. John, this has been a very, very enjoyable podcast. It's so fun talking to you each week with what we do in Business Accelerator at Thought Leader, but even more so to give you a stage to talk about your message, to get out to the world, really of eradicating or slowly starting to deroot fear. And the best way to do it is what I took today is looking at our life as a garden. And for a lot of us, that garden has some roots of fear in it. So instead of just clipping the weeds of fear for them to grow back, we have to uproot them. And at the root, the biggest, two biggest things at that crown root are our inner critic, which leans emotional, which we need to bring logic around, and making excuses, which tends to lean logical, that we need to bring some emotion to revitalize. And the best first step for it is awareness. So we know about it. Taking time each morning to make a bold statement of how we are going to show up and deroot our garden so we can regrow love and passion. John, I appreciate it, my friend. And anybody listening, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your presence. Thank you so much for your awareness and your ability to want to learn. We hope you get outside of your comfort zone if you're there. And if you're flourishing in your uncomfort zone, reach out to us so we can share your story on the Thought Leader podcast. My name is Dylan Barr, and we will see you on the next episode.